In the governance of men, nothing is more cunningly necessary than the illusion that they are free. The idea of free will, that man chooses his path, commands his fate, and bends events to the force of his desires, is perhaps the most elegant fiction crafted by those who rule. It is not freedom itself that holds power, but the belief in it, and from this belief, the masses can be moved, controlled, pacified, and persuaded not by the blade but by the mirror. The prince who understands the fragility of this illusion wields a silent weapon. He does not need to chain the limbs of his people when he can capture their minds. They will sing praises of liberty while walking the paths he has laid for them. They will curse the tyrant from whom they are told they are free, even as they obey the laws he has written and bow to the systems he controls. The great art of ruling is not in granting freedom, but in making the absence of it feel like a personal choice. Observe any commonwealth, any republic, any democracy. Do the people govern? Are their voices truly their own? They are offered choices, yes, but choices within carefully constructed limits. One path leads to the market, another to the field. One candidate wears the red cloak, the other blue. But both serve the same hand behind the curtain. It is the semblance of choice that matters, not its substance. Bread is still bread whether the slave is told he may eat it of his own will, or is ordered to do so. If he believes it is his will, he thanks his master for liberty. This deception is not cruel, it is practical. A man who believes he is free is less likely to rebel. He bears his burdens more willingly, for he imagines them self-chosen. The tax is no longer a yoke but a contribution, the war no longer a demand but a duty. Thus, the clever ruler clothes necessity in the garments of choice. Let the people cast their stones at idols and celebrate their victories in courts and councils, as long as the real strings remain unseen. Even religion, that great pillar of social order, has long been used to affirm the illusion. It teaches that man is free to sin or to obey, free to love or to betray, but warns that invisible forces observe and judge all. In this, it mirrors the state. The prince allows liberty in small matters, but binds the people in the essential ones. He lets them argue over laws they will never change and elect officials they did not select. In so doing, he becomes invisible, and the illusion of self-governance replaces the harsh clarity of rule. In truth, most men do not desire freedom. They desire comfort, protection, predictability. Freedom is frightening. It demands knowledge, strength, and action, qualities that most have neither the time nor the will to cultivate. Better to believe in freedom while being led than to confront the terrifying responsibility of real autonomy. The ruler who understands this gives the people their dreams and governs their realities. He ensures that their vision never clears long enough to recognize the structure of their cage. The idea of liberty, when divorced from power, becomes theater. The citizen may vote, but does he decide? He may speak, but does his voice echo beyond the chamber of his equals? His thoughts are shaped by institutions, his values by inheritance, his movements by laws he did not write and customs he does not question. Yet he walks with the pride of a free man because the scaffolding of his life has been wrapped in the banners of choice. Let us not suppose that this manipulation is born of malice. On the contrary, it is a virtue of effective rule. Without it, there is disorder. Man, if truly free, would destroy himself. His passions would rise above reason, his appetites above law. He must be directed like a river through stone. The illusion of free will is not only a political convenience, it is a safeguard against chaos. Let him believe, then, that the path he walks was chosen by his own feet. Let him sleep peacefully, assured of his sovereignty, while the wise shape the world around him. To rule is to understand the hearts of men and to know that freedom, though sung of in poetry and praised in law, is rarely desired in its raw form. The masterstroke is not to grant it, but to make its absence unnoticeable. A people convinced of their freedom will police themselves better than any sword or scaffold ever could. They will condemn the rebel, not out of fear, but out of loyalty to the illusion that binds them. And thus, the prince secures not just obedience, but devotion. In the affairs of men, it is not will that governs the world, but the twin sovereigns of fortune and necessity. These two forces, unseen yet inescapable, command the destinies of empires and beggars alike. The belief that man is free to chart his own course, independent of these powers, is not only naive but dangerous. It breeds overconfidence, sows disorder, and blinds the ruler to the real conditions under which authority must be seized and preserved. Fortune is that capricious mistress who bestows her favors without warning and just as quickly withdraws them. She is neither loyal nor predictable, and yet her influence is vast. Kingdoms rise not always by virtue, but often by chance. A storm that breaks the enemy fleet, a death that opens a throne, a coin of gold found where none was expected. Those who succeed often mistake her gifts for the fruits of their own labor, and in that delusion they fall. For fortune is not to be trusted, only used. Necessity, on the other hand, is iron. She does not tempt, she demands. Where fortune may offer opportunities, necessity imposes actions. The prince who fails to recognize her dictates will find himself at the mercy of events he might have shaped. It is necessity that compels decisions when there are no good choices. When a friend must be betrayed, a city sacrificed, a lie spoken to preserve peace, the weak man hesitates. The strong man obeys necessity without shame. For there is no virtue in ruin, no glory in honesty that leads to destruction. Together, these forces shape the course of history far more than any man's will. The wise ruler does not imagine himself above them, but seeks to understand their patterns. He does not rage against fortune when she turns, nor refuse necessity when she commands. Rather, he prepares for her tempests and builds his strength in her calms. When fortune smiles, he takes all he can. When she scowls, he endures. And when necessity speaks, he acts with swiftness and without remorse. Those who speak of liberty and human choice misunderstand the true machinery of power. They believe history to be a tale of intentions, of noble desires and individual actions, but they are mistaken. History is written in the ink of inevitability. A famine leads to revolt, a broken treaty to war, an insult to assassination. The names change, the banners change, but beneath it all lies the same truth: men are not free, but bound by the consequences of their condition. The prince who does not control necessity will be controlled by it. To command these forces is not to escape them, but to harness them. One cannot avoid fortune, but one can prepare for her. She favors the bold, the audacious, those who do not wait for her graces but seize them. If she is a river, then the ruler must be the engineer who constructs the dam and channels her floods. But even the strongest walls may fail. It is then that necessity takes hold. When plans collapse, when allies betray, when enemies grow stronger, there is no longer room for morality or desire. There is only what must be done. A ruler is measured not by how he governs in times of ease, but by how he responds to the crushing pressure of necessity. He must not seek to be loved when fear will suffice. He must not cling to virtue when vice is required. He must not hesitate when delay is fatal. These are the moments that define a reign. Not the grand speeches or the illusions of free assemblies, but the silent decisions made in the dead of night when everything hangs in the balance. In those moments, fortune is absent and necessity is the only voice. It is a fatal error to imagine that one can shape events purely by will or intention. The greatest plans fail when they are not matched to the needs of the hour. Ambition without timing is suicide. Morality without realism is weakness. To rule well is to discern the moment when fortune offers her hand and the moment when necessity demands blood. The prince who does both is not free, but he is effective. And in effectiveness lies survival. The people may be permitted to dream of freedom, to believe they have chosen their laws and their leaders, but the ruler must never fall into such delusions. He must know that it is not their will, nor his, that governs the state, but the circumstances that press upon it. It is not enough to be just, one must be strong. It is not enough to be right, one must win. Fortune cares little for justice, and necessity has no patience for dreams. Among the instruments of rule, none is more essential nor more elegant than deception. Where brute force breaks, deception bends. Where law limits, deception liberates. It is not the sword that rules most effectively, but the unseen hand that directs men to their own subjugation under the illusion of self-direction. The most powerful form of control is not that which imposes obedience by force, but that which convinces the subject that the path he takes was freely chosen. To govern is not to crush men's wills, but to guide them while preserving their sense of autonomy. In the practice of power, it is never necessary that the people know the truth. It is only necessary that they believe what is useful. The ruler who masters deception does not lie indiscriminately. He crafts lies with precision, as a sculptor shapes marble. He does not offer truth as a gift, for truth is dangerous. Truth is unstable. Truth, when it contradicts the interests of the state, is a weapon in the hands of the discontented. Therefore, the wise prince does not allow truth to become an idol. He molds perception instead, crafting realities that suit the needs of order and dominion. There is no contradiction in presenting freedom while denying it, in offering choice where none truly exists. The prince arranges the stage, sets the lighting, and provides two doors, knowing full well that behind both lies the same corridor. The people, content in their belief that they have chosen, do not notice the sameness of destination. This is not betrayal, it is necessity. For most men are not equipped to choose wisely. They choose according to impulse, fear, and ignorance. The state cannot afford to suffer the chaos of uninstructed freedom. Therefore, it is better to let men believe themselves free, while steering them toward decisions that preserve the strength of the realm. It is often said that deception is dishonorable. This is the complaint of those who do not understand power. Honor is a luxury of the powerless. The ruler must deal not with ideals, but with outcomes. If a lie brings peace, is it worse than a truth that brings war? If the illusion of liberty secures loyalty, is it less valuable than the dangerous openness of actual independence? The ruler who prefers truth for its own sake will soon find himself deposed by those who understand that the people crave not truth, but certainty. They wish to believe, and it is the prince's task to provide beliefs that sustain the body politic. The greatest rulers have always been masters of appearance. It is not necessary to be virtuous. It is enough to seem so. It is not necessary to be just. It is enough that justice appears to prevail. When the people believe they have justice, they rest. When they believe their rulers are moral, they obey. They do not investigate further. It is in this blindness, this comfort of illusion, that the true art of governance lies. The ruler builds institutions not to distribute power, but to concentrate it invisibly. He allows speech so long as it serves him. He tolerates dissent when it discredits itself, and he rewards loyalty that cloaks itself in the language of independence. One must also understand that deception is not always falsehood. It can be the careful omission of truth, the structuring of facts to lead to a desired conclusion, the repetition of a single idea until it becomes unassailable. It can be found in rituals, in ceremonies, in language itself. By shaping the very words with which people think, the ruler shapes their capacity to understand their own condition. When the people no longer have the language to express rebellion, they lose the ability to even conceive of it. This is a deception deeper than any lie. It is a silence imposed upon the soul. Even in times of crisis, when control must become more visible, the use of deception remains crucial. Let the harsh measure be presented as an act of reluctant necessity. Let the decree be issued in the name of the people, even if their voices were never heard. Let the laws that bind them be described as protections. This softens resistance, disarms opposition. When the people think they are participating in power, they offer little struggle. They become accomplices to their own restraint. It is important that the ruler himself remain hidden in his manipulations. Let the institutions speak. Let the advisors advise. Let the ministers proclaim. The prince must be the calm at the center, untainted by the crude necessities of control. This distance allows him to appear innocent, even as his designs unfold. The true master of deception does not merely lie. He constructs an entire reality in which the lie is no longer questioned. This is the pinnacle of dominion, not through force, but through belief, through perception, through the silent shaping of what men think is true. In the governance of men, freedom is a pleasant tale, a dream often spoken of in taverns and courts, yet it bears no substance when tested against the hard demands of rule. It is a word that pleases the ear and stirs the heart, but it is fear that disciplines the hand and steadies the will. The wise ruler does not seek to make his people free, but safe, and not safe by their own judgments, but by his. Freedom invites disorder, but fear breeds obedience, and in obedience the state finds its spine. To build power upon freedom is to erect a palace upon sand. Freedom, once granted without limits, breeds ambition, competition, dissent, and eventually revolt. The subjects who believe themselves sovereign soon demand not only choice, but control. And the prince who indulges them too freely will find himself overthrown by the very hands he once uplifted. But fear, if rightly administered, binds with stronger cords. It sharpens loyalty, not out of love, which is fickle, but out of necessity. The man who fears his ruler will not betray him, for he knows the price. There is a delicate art to wielding fear. It must not be cruel for its own sake, nor so severe that it provokes desperation. Fear must be measured, purposeful, and silent where possible. It should lie beneath the surface of civic life, like the current beneath calm waters. The citizens should not speak of it openly, but they should feel it in every hesitation, every glance, every law passed in quiet submission. The prince should be merciful in appearance, but known to be ruthless in need. This duality sustains stability better than the illusion of freedom ever could. When people are governed through the promise of liberty, they are made to believe their desires shape the direction of the state. This leads to the chaos of factions, the competition of voices, the weakening of purpose. Each believes his interest superior, and none agrees. But when fear reigns, cold, controlled, invisible, it unites them in common silence. They may not love their ruler, but they will obey him. They will rise early, pay their taxes, march in formation, and silence their own doubts before they take form. For the price of rebellion, they understand, is too high. Freedom is also a burden, though few admit it. The man who is free must make choices, carry blame, confront uncertainty. He may be ruined by his own errors, left exposed when fortune turns against him. But fear offers clarity. It tells him where to walk, when to kneel, whom to trust. The man governed by fear sleeps better than the man tortured by freedom's demands. The ruler who provides such stability, even at the cost of liberty, will be remembered not as a tyrant by the masses, but as a protector. It is important to distinguish fear from terror. Terror consumes a people. Fear sustains them. A ruler who governs by terror invites hatred, and hatred, once ripened, breeds conspiracies. But fear, applied like poison in wine, subtle, silent, can control even the boldest spirit. It may be as simple as a whisper about punishments past, or the silent vanishing of those who defied the throne. When done with finesse, no one need ever be told directly. The lesson is understood. It circulates through rumor, through myth, through cautious glances. It becomes part of the air itself. Even the laws, those instruments most celebrated in free societies, can be forged into tools of fear. The wise prince does not merely pass laws to please the people, but to limit them, to remind them. The law must protect, yes, but it must also loom. It must punish as much as it rewards. It must create a perimeter beyond which no man dares step. Every citizen must understand your liberty ends where necessity begins. The ruler defines that necessity. He does so not arbitrarily, but strategically, always with the preservation of order in mind. Institutions, too, must be shaped to maintain this balance. They must appear open, participatory, benevolent, but they must be built upon rules that ensure compliance. The people may speak, but only within bounds. They may vote, but only among chosen options. This, again, is the theater of freedom hiding the mechanism of fear. And the more skillfully the ruler designs it, the less aware the people become of the force that governs them. They live in peace, in apparent liberty, unaware that their harmony is purchased with their submission. The soldiers of the state, the watchmen, the judges, all must be made to fear the prince slightly more than they love their families. This ensures their loyalty. The advisors and ministers, too, must be kept uncertain. Their ambition must be checked by the knowledge that failure or betrayal will not go unpunished. Fear is the glue that holds the structure together. It keeps the tower from swaying in the winds of opinion, the flood of unrest, the earthquake of rebellion. When the prince walks among his people, they may cheer, they may smile, but it is not affection that protects him. It is the silent knowledge that he is not to be challenged. His peace is not built upon mutual agreement, but upon strategic submission. In this, his rule becomes not merely stable, but enduring. The nature of the common man is not as complex as poets and philosophers would pretend. He desires not freedom in its true form, which is harsh and unforgiving, but the illusion of it so long as his stomach is filled, his house unburned, and his children alive. The prince who understands this truth commands not only the bodies of his subjects, but their spirits. For in times of chaos, it is not liberty they call for, but discipline. Not choice, but protection. The masses do not revolt against authority for being too great, but for being too weak to preserve order. When fire touches their doorsteps and uncertainty creeps into their homes, they beg for the very chains they once cursed. Order is the true desire of the multitude. They do not yearn for self-rule, they yearn for predictability, for stability, for a life without the burden of constant decisions. Autonomy, when stripped of its gilded mask, is responsibility, a weight that the people are neither trained nor willing to bear. While a few may cry out for freedom, organize in circles, or write seditious pamphlets, most merely wish to be governed well enough not to suffer. And if that governance requires obedience rather than participation, silence rather than expression, most will accept it, and some will even welcome it. The wise ruler exploits this instinct. He does not attempt to liberate his subjects in the philosophical sense, but to manage them efficiently, keeping the machinery of daily life running in such a way that men mistake order for freedom. When bread is affordable, streets are safe, and judgment swift, the people will not question the hand that controls these things. They will not ask who truly holds power if they are allowed to live without interference. In this manner, control is not forced but internalized. The subject becomes his own guardian, his own censor, his own enforcer. The ruler need not intrude, for the citizen has learned to prefer the rules that confine him. Consider the man who toils in the marketplace. He wakes, works, returns home, and repeats. Ask him what he values, and he may say liberty. But if given actual autonomy, if the system around him were to collapse, if laws ceased and governance vanished, he would not celebrate. He would panic. He would cry out for order, even if it returned to him in the form of a mailed fist. The promise of autonomy is seductive only until its consequences must be endured. At that moment, the masses will accept hierarchy, structure, and even despotism if it promises to restore the peace they mistook for freedom. Thus, the prince need not fear the intellectual who champions liberty from a podium. That man speaks to minds, not bellies. The true danger lies in disorder, not dissent. It is chaos, not criticism, that erodes the state. When roads are unsafe, when thieves go unpunished, when crops fail and trade halts, then the people turn restless. Not out of a thirst for liberty, but because their need for order has been violated. Restore order swiftly, and the people will forget the liberties that were suspended in the process. They will remember only that their prince acted decisively, and for this, he will be praised. Ritual and custom serve as the architecture of this illusion. They provide the rhythm and repetition that soothe the common mind. A government that changes too frequently, that questions its own authority, that allows too many voices to compete in public, invites unease. The people may cheer variety, but they trust consistency. The prince must appear firm, enduring, almost immovable. He must be like the mountain, calm, high, unchanging, even if beneath the surface he is constantly adjusting his strategies and means. This image of permanence is more valuable than any proclamation of rights. The great failure of many rulers is their attempt to grant autonomy to those who do not know what to do with it. Such attempts result in the rise of factions, the fracturing of purpose, the confusion of values. When too many are permitted to lead, no one truly governs. The prince must give the people the sensation of participation while withholding its dangerous substance. Let them cast their votes, so long as the outcomes are managed. Let them debate, so long as the conclusion is predetermined. This fosters the illusion of autonomy while maintaining the reality of order. Even justice, That pillar of civilized life must be managed with this understanding. The people do not desire complex theories of fairness. They desire outcomes that make sense, that are swift and consistent. They do not demand perfect autonomy in legal matters. They demand that the wicked be punished, the honest protected. The prince must ensure that justice is seen as his gift, his instrument of order. In this way, the people will regard him not as their overlord, but as their guarantor of peace, their guardian against chaos. In private, the prince may reflect on the simplicity of the common soul. He will understand that what men say they desire is often the opposite of what they will accept. They will chant the praises of freedom, yet choose comfort and security at every opportunity. They will decry the absence of liberty, even as they remain unmoved to action. The prince who gives them what they truly want, structure, certainty, control, will rule longer and more securely than one who tries to liberate them in the abstract sense. To rule effectively is not to indulge the fantasies of the governed, but to understand their true nature, even when they themselves do not. Men speak often of freedom, of virtue, of justice, yet their actions reveal a deeper hunger for safety, for simplicity, for the illusion of choice rather than its perilous weight. The cunning prince does not challenge this contradiction, he embraces it. He shapes perception, curates belief, engineers consent, and rules not by open chains, but by silent agreements, formed in the minds of those who would rather be guided than left adrift. The illusion of free will is the most exquisite tool of dominion. It pacifies ambition, directs unrest, and turns rebellion inward. When subjects believe their choices are their own, they no longer see the hand that shaped them. When they mistake order for liberty, fear for loyalty, and manipulation for benevolence, the ruler becomes not a tyrant, but a necessity. Power, in its purest form, is not taken. It is given, freely, by those who feel they are still free. Thus, the enduring truth remains. It is not by appealing to man's better nature that one commands him, but by mastering his instincts, his fears, and his desire for order. In this, the sovereign finds the clearest path to control, not through the granting of liberty, but through the careful construction of its illusion.